everyone, welcome to After Class with Ballet for All,
a podcast by two passionate adult ballerinas about all things adult ballet related.
and some random thoughts in between.
We're so glad you're here.
So grab your water bottle
Or a cup of coffee.
and join us for a quick chat after class.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of After Class with Ballet for All. Today's episode is going to be all about how to use the bar properly. So we're going to be talking about things like your alignment when standing next to the bar, placement of your hands, and how to properly hold the bar. So let's get into it. Hi Elena, how's it going?
Hello, Hannah. Oh, good. Thank you. So good to have you back again.
Yay, I am so ready for this episode. We talked about doing this one. I think we were recording some of our last episodes. It came up and we're like, we should just do a full episode on this one.
Yeah. It is funny because sometimes you think about, of course I know how to use the bar, but there is so much more about it. And I think that all started because we were talking about when, I think it was your teacher, or we were thinking about the little kids, why we don't let them play with the ballet bar, like hanging from the ballet bar when they first get to class. And to me, I didn't even relate it that way because I know that I teach the little kids, we don't hang on the bar. Bar is just not a toy. It's another instrument, really important in the ballet class. But you don't really think on the why. And the way is we are trying to create that perception of the bar being that very special tool. We don't want them to hang because then they will get the wrong gripping position of the hands, which is not ballet, right?
Yeah, it's so true. I remember when I took class as a kid, like it was just kind of drilled in, of don't hang on the bar, don't hang on the bar. And you don't really think too much about it. And then you realize that that is very intentional because it is a preparation for how our whole relationship with the bar is supposed to be as dancers. So like you said, I think this one is important because we all, as ballet dancers, are going to be at the bar for a large chunk of our training. And so it's really important that we know how to use it properly. So maybe we should start at the very beginning with placement and the placement and alignment of our bodies in relation to the bar. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, to begin with, how you know the distance between you and the bar is very important. You can't be too close to it that you are very uncomfortable, but you can't be far away where you just have your fingertips on the bar. So basically do a second position and then comfortably lower that elbow down and rest your palm on the bar. Something very, very important that is going to establish that separation between you and the bar is that elbow has to be in front of you, but it can't be touching the bar. It can't be touching your hip either. And it's a slide in front of your hips, but bent. It's never going to be stretched. So it's going to be bent. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think another element is if you're at home and you have control over the height of your bar or whatever surface you're using as a bar, choosing something that is that optimal height where it's above your waist but below your armpit, because as you said, we really want it to be as close to what our arms would be at in second position and then just slightly dropped down, an inch or so. So if the bar is too high, that's going to throw your alignment in one direction. And if it's too low, it's going to throw your alignment. So finding something that's in that sweet spot height-wise is also a really important part. And then what about, you kind of touched on it, but I think a really important thing, and this is something that gets so common in class, really at any level of dancers, I think we have a tendency to not have the proper placement of our hands on the bar. So you want to talk a little bit more about that and what proper hand placement is?
Yeah, it is funny because that's one of the things that could not anger, but a little bit of like, ee, on the ballet teacher when they see you at the bar. So basically put your fingers together, right? Take your right hand and put fingers together, one beside the other one, and then just round your arm as if you were going to grab something. And rather than gripping your thumb around the bar, that thumb is going to be right beside your index finger as well. And all of the fingers are going to be resting on top of the bar. And something that we oversee sometimes is the wrist has to drop down as well. So the wrist doesn't stay still and really stiff. Your wrist just let it drop down and rest with that elbow down. It's just your fingers on the bar. Because once you add the wrist, that's when you start to grip. It's just wrist down, round position of your hand, and all the fingers on the top of the bar.
Yeah, because if you're engaging your wrist, it's creating almost like a stiffness, I think.
Yeah.
It is what we're trying to avoid at the bar, and really keeping the bar as just a support where our hand is resting on top versus, like you said, that gripping feeling, which is really what starts to happen as soon as the wrist kind of locks out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the big thing is like the thumbs, I think is such a common one. It's so tempting to wrap our thumb around the bar, especially when you start doing things on one leg in releve, because that's, when your balance starts to kind of come into question. And so I think a lot of times that's when I know I'm tempted to wrap that thumb, is when I go on, one leg in releve and you're like, ugh, and it really is cheating.
And it's natural to us as well. Like when you think about it, you don't go around, like if you go in a bus or something like that, you don't hold the bar of the bus like all round fingers on top of it. No, you just grip. You use your thumb for stability, right? And something interesting is, if we lift the wrist up, then your elbow goes up, then your shoulder goes up, and then the entire body alignment is gone. So shoulder down, elbow down, wrist down, soft. Although in ballet, everything is really lifting, elongating, and growing, we always need to make things to look like we are not putting any effort on it, right? So that resting wrist down will help you to keep that upright position and body alignment.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of even just visually assessing if you're holding the bar correctly is, does your hand and wrist look relaxed? Because I think that's a really quick and easy way to determine if it's correct. Like if it looks stiff, if your hand looks stiff, if your wrist looks stiff, it's not in the right place. But if everything looks very relaxed, like just as relaxed as your hand that's off the bar, it's just resting on top so that you have that ability to press down to stabilize yourself if you need it, but not grip using the thumb. Another thing too that I think a lot of beginners especially might not know is that our hand is meant to move with us and slide forward and back. Your hand needs to have the ability to slide and glide with you. And if you're having that death grip on the bar, even without realizing it, you're not going to realize that you're not moving your hand. And so then you're going to go forward and you're going to leave your arm behind, or you're going to go back and your arm's going to be too far forward. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and about our hand needing to move with us.
And it's interesting because every time I have a new student, I need to keep in mind to remind them that the hand moves with you. And if you don't really know how to recognize when to move that arm with you, always think of the first rule. Elbows stay in front of your hips. If you move those hips forward, elbow can be behind your back. It cannot be behind your body. So if you move your hips forward, that hand has to slide forward with you. If you move back and your hips go back, elbows in front of you, but arm doesn't stay extended, full extended. Therefore, the arm needs to slide back with you. And this, you're going to see it a lot as you progress on your technique, because as Hannah, you were saying, as you do a chasse forward, as you do a plie to force and transfer your body weight over the front leg, your body weight already transferred from one leg to the next one. Therefore, the distance between your hips and your arm has to change. You have to again transfer forward. You will be moving around and turn at the bar. So you always need to be sure that, again, first, you do not have your entire body weight on that arm, because if you're moving on to none, you're moving away from the direction, from the bar or towards the bar. You're changing hands and you might need to change to the next hand. And as soon as you know where that elbow goes, you will know where your hand goes, and that way you will always be able to transfer back and forth, sideways, yeah? It is tricky to get used to it, and a lot of students don't understand that, yes, you're able to do it. Like sometimes you feel like, but I'm at the bar, I'm not meant to move. No, you are at the bar, but use it as a tool for support, not as a fixed instrument.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, we did that episode a while ago on kind of the unspoken rules of ballet. And I think that sometimes we assume that that's one of them, that we're not supposed to move our hand on the bar. And I don't know if that's just because so much of ballet is very pulled up and you're trying to stay on balance in a single spot. And so we kind of just assume like, oh, my arm needs to stay there. But I think when I realized that my hand on the bar was a lot more fluid and able to move with me, it really changed the way I used it, because you realize that it is just a support tool and it's not something that you have to feel so locked onto. And it's hard, it's hard. It makes it harder because you're having to work harder on your own stability without gripping the bar, but it's also kind of freeing because I think it makes you feel closer to what it feels like to dance in the center, if that makes sense. Like, I think once I started really working on trying to change my relationship with the bar in that way, I started to feel a little bit more freed up as dancer. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
definitely, like, the bar is only the foundation to what you're going to do in the center. If you get used to it, just to grip, to push down, to use the bar every time you turn and you go straight to the bar, and it just shoves it forward, you hold the bar, and you don't really start to work on positioning the hand. We don't really rest the entire body weight. It's just a little bit of support. It's having that elbow relaxed, that shoulder relaxed, that hand is positioned but not getting all the weight, it's not getting all the work, your hand is not getting tense. If you work on that, your center work will definitely get slowly better because you are not relying on the bar to do everything. Yeah, actually really relying on your muscles to carry on with the lifting and the working and the supporting, right?
yeah.
That brings me to what you were saying before, that you heard refer to the bar as your partner, your pas de deux partner. That was a great analogy that I never heard before, but to me, that's amazing.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I always hear these great things and I never remember where I heard them. And I feel bad referencing on the podcast because I want to give credit to whoever said it, but I genuinely can't remember who said it, where I heard it. But I was like, wow, that is such a great way to think of it, is as your bar being your pas de deux partner. And if that was a person, if the bar was a person, you wouldn't be gripping their hand and squeezing their fingers, and you wouldn't be leaning your whole body weight into them. You'd be a lot more conscious of trying to partner them, like as a true partnership, not as just using them to completely support you and hold you up. And so that's something I try to remind myself during class. Like, am I treating the bar like a pas de deux partner? And another thing I think is so good to do that's kind of helps you keep that same mindset is throughout class, taking your hand off the bar for a few counts. I know especially, when we get to things like rond de jambe and fondus, you're primarily on one supporting leg and that working leg is really starting to move. And so that's usually the point in class where I think it can get really tempting to grip on the bar. And so if you get in the habit of making yourself just lift your fingers off the bar for, even if it's just you start with doing it for 1 count, 2 counts, and kind of working up to, lately I've been trying to just keep my hand off the bar for like a good chunk of rond de jambe. And I feel like it's really helping me in center because I'm starting to feel that really pulled up feeling at the bar, and I'm not waiting till center to then have to find it. So I think that's a great way to start.
Definitely. That's a great idea. And anytime you have the opportunity, if you are doing a simple balance on coup de pied and it's 2 counts, just if you don't have time to bring arms to the first position, just lift the fingers off the bar and find where your body weight is, where your axis is. Same when you're doing your tendus. I keep saying all the time, do your tendus, but do it as you are not going to lift the leg off the ground because obviously it's a tendu and that's the characteristic. It stays on the floor. However, You need to feel that if you have to lift that leg at any time, you can do it. So that's where your body weight is going to be. And the same is with the bar. So you have to have that hand on the bar just placed enough that if you have to free everything and lift your leg in the air and lift your arm off the bar, you can do it. It's not that you have to like, oh wait, but you then start transferring body weight and start to lift your hands and lower and lift and lower. No, so get to the point in which whenever at the bar you want to lift either your leg or hand off the bar, you can do it in questions of one musical count. If you get to that point, as you're working at the bar, that would be the perfect foundation for your center work.
Yeah. Yeah, because the bar, I mean, it's so great as a training tool, but I think the flip side to the bar is that if you're not using it correctly, it's going to actually hinder your center work. And it's meant to help you prepare for center, but it's so easy for it to become like a security blanket or a crutch that once we get to center, if we've been working incorrectly, it's really hard to make that jump. That's something I saw a lot in my own dancing, especially because I was training so much at home during COVID, only doing bar classes. And then when studios opened back up and I was able to take in-person classes and spend more time in the center, I realized how many bad habits I had developed at the bar by just being too reliant on it. And I think it's just such a delicate balance. It's like bar work is such an important part of developing your technique, but if you're not using it properly, it can actually really hurt you. So we have to be so careful how we use it.
It is such a fine line in between. Like, it's so good. Obviously, we start everything at the bar. It's like that's your walk-in before you can run and you can jump, right? So I will take everything that my students are not doing right or correctly at the center or they don't understand. I will take all that straight to the bar first. Everything, even a walk. I would take your walks from the center, get to the bar, and like break it in pieces and do it again at the bar. However, there will need to be a fresh line in which to decide, okay, I already train and practice, but that's it. Now I need to start to find a way to go back to the center. And you use the bar as a support and as a foundation, but not as the main technical thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's at the end of the day, we dance most of the time without a bar.
Yeah, it's so important. But I think if you can do yourself the biggest favor by using the bar properly. If you're just starting as a beginner and you start using the bar properly, you are going to set yourself up so well for center work. And even if you've been dancing for a while and you have bad habits like I've had, but you start getting conscious about them, it will help you so much. Like, I almost feel like that's one of the best kept secrets of how to improve your center work is to start working correctly at the bar.
At the bar. Exactly.
We talk about other things and all those other things are good, but it's like if you're spending, theoretically 40 minutes, 45 minutes of an hour and a half class at the bar, that's the best way to improve your center work. Yes, to start working correctly at the bar. So hopefully this episode was helpful. I think it's just such a fundamental topic within ballet. So I really hope it was a helpful conversation for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And it's either for beginners, intermediates, and advanced dancers. Like, sometimes you wonder, why do I keep missing this step? Or my center work isn't strong enough. So this is for everyone, and I really love that. I hope it's as useful as we think it is.
Yes. Well, let us know what you guys think, and if there's anything that we missed, if you have any tips or tricks for working better and more properly at the bar, please let us know. We'll see you guys on our next one. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to After Class with Ballet for All.
Join the community on YouTube and Instagram, or come dance with us, our weekly Zoom classes for adult ballerinas like you.
Links included in the episode description. Special thank you to our sponsors.
See you next time after class. Podcast produced by Mission Bridge Media.